Hi guys, in this review I'll be checking out a new 9-inch CarPlay display from HOTPEAK. This is a wireless CarPlay and Android Auto portable CarPlay display, which has a built-in 4K dash camera at the back, as well as a 1080p rear backup camera as well. Okay, so let's check out what's inside the box. Okay, so here's what you get inside the box. You get a warranty card and a rather thick instruction manual with various languages to tell you how to install and get connected. You get the 9-inch display itself. There is a windscreen mount, and you get a fixed mount with adhesive pad pre-attached and a backup. There's the 12-volt adapter with a USB pass-through, and it connects via USB-C with plenty of cable in between. This model comes with a 1080p rear-facing camera and all the adhesive and installation tools that you will need, as well as lots of cable length to get it to the back of your car. And then you will have to splice this with the red cable. You get a straight end 3.5mm auxiliary cable, a prying tool, and 4 adhesive clips to help with cable management of any of these cables that you're going to be needing to install and power the display. Okay, so looking over the display then, it is a definitely fairly light display. You've got a very thin initial display bezel around the outside, but it does get a little bit more chunkier on the front facing side. And we have a small microphone on the bottom left hand corner there. Up on top we have a single power button to potentially wake and sleep the display. On the right hand side there are no I/O ports, whereas on the left hand side we do have some I/O ports. We have a pre-installed SD card that comes pre-supplied, that is 64 gig. And then from the bottom we've got USB-C power. We have the AV input port for your rear view camera, SD card slot for storing the dashcam footage, and at the very top there we've got an auxiliary port for a cable audio connection. And over on the back then we've got some mounting points, so you can actually choose how high you want the display to be mounted, which is quite nice to see. Some speaker grills and cooling at the top. And here on the left hand side, or the back right, we've got a 4K camera, and they also do a 2.5K camera as well for a slightly cheaper price. You have some rotation, but it does go up vertically should you want to peek over the top of a dashboard, for example. But that will mean that it does stick out at the very top of the display there. But if you don't really need that, you can just pop that back and it's going to be a little bit more discreet behind the display. And then you've got some wiggle room at the top there, as well as side to side, and then you've got some rotation as well should you need to position it nicely over your dashboard. Okay, so let's get this powered up. Okay, so we've got a nice fast boot time there. The chime is exactly the same as what we've experienced with some other portable displays. So I would say that this is pretty much piggybacking off the same software as some of the other portable displays that are currently available, including things like the Coral Vision. It does have a very similar UI. Not sure why they've used grey here on the font. Instead of white, loses its contrast a bit. But we've got some shortcut icons to CarPlay, Android Auto. And we've got casting as well ability, so you can actually connect to this display's Wi-Fi network and cast from your mobile phone, either through AirPlay or through Android casting. You've got audio output option selection here, quick access, as well as playback of any DVR content that's been caught from the dashboard camera. At the top here, you've got whether it's recording, whether the SIM has been installed, any Bluetooth or Wi-Fi connections also highlighted at the top here. And at the bottom, you've got a shortcut drawer to power the display on and off, adjust the brightness between auto and manual, quick access to the DV camera, which looks pretty good so far. And then you can go home, quick access to the speaker because there's no physical buttons on the actual display itself. And then we've got quick access to settings. And here we have a very similar settings screen to like the Coral Vision that we've seen. Exactly the same icons, but a little bit more simplified. We've got 3 group tabs. So the first tab is general with screensaver function. Driving position between where you want CarPlay and Android Auto to be positioned in its dock. Brightness settings, whether you want auto and the maximum auto brightness limits. And you've got assistive touch here, which basically delivers a floating button over the UI interface over things like CarPlay, so you can quickly access things like brightness and volume. So we'll turn that off for now. You can clear connections that you had previously connected. Change the wallpaper between not many wallpapers. And here's quick access to servicing should you want to apply a new update and to see if there's any updates available. Over on the camera section, you've got recording resolution up to 4K. This is the loop time, which we'll do for 5 minutes. Collision sensitivity for emergency recordings being saved. Whether you want to record from the dash cam, which is going to record internal noises, whether you want to mirror the rear image from the rear camera feed, and also collaborate the reverse lines. Finally, the system, you can change the languages, quite a few languages to select from there. Tip sound, which is basically the touch sound, you can turn that on and off, which I've just now turned off. Change the date and time. Storage info is how much you've got left on your TF card. You can format the card. Do a factory reset should you want to pass the display onto someone else. And also check the firmware version that you're currently running. So quick access to the top there to go backwards as well. But other than that, that's the main grunt of the display itself. Over on the dashboard section, you've got your camera feed that you're actually showing at the moment. And then we've got lock videos, take photographs, and toggle the audio on and off, and then a quick access to home, as well as starting and stopping the recording as well if you don't want to actually record anything at the time. So we'll check this camera and its abilities once we get onto the road with this display installed on my dashboard. But for now, let's check out CarPlay and see how quickly that connects. So we'll just connect to the Bluetooth profile. We'll enter CarPlay here, which is going to tell you exactly what you need to do to get connected. It's told you the Bluetooth device. It's come up here as well on my phone. So we'll tap that and we're in. So basically, I'd say that's probably about 12-ish seconds, which is not too bad. And now that we're in, we're now seeing a full 10 suite of apps there on the first page. So that's going to basically tell you that this is actually running at quite a good higher resolution than most displays. The display is on the low end of CarPlay displays that I've experienced so far. You can see that the CarPlay feed is actually over and underneath the top bezel. At least you can see the bottom bezel just fine, so it's a little bit cut off at the top there on the wallpaper. It's a little bit of a quality issue there. Getting back to the display is nice and quick. You can go back into CarPlay, and I'd say interactions aren't too bad. It's nice and responsive. Check out some audio from the speaker. So the speaker's on the underneath this grill part here. So for a left-hand drive, it's going to be nearer to you than a right-hand drive would be, but it's going to bounce off the windscreen anyway and come back at you. Let's try this power button. That basically turns on and off should you be driving and you just want to hear things and not actually necessarily see the display. Because it is a 9-inch display, it's going to stick out quite a bit onto your dashboard. It's going to be quite a big chunk of screen, but because it's quite light in its weight, I would say this would actually work quite well with vent mounting as well. Let's try a voice microphone test. Hi, this is Anthony from CarPlayLife.com, and this is an audio test using hopefully the microphone, which is here, of the HOTPEAK 9-inch CarPlay display, and this is an audio test. Okay, so the microphone is pretty good, and we did realize that that's where the microphone is, so that's really good to see that it's front facing as well and it's not hidden behind the display to give you a more muted or distant sounding input from the microphone. So I'm happy with that. Let's try a call test. Hello? 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 Okay, so that was an audio test. Quality is good, and also the audio delay is also very good too. So that's a very good positive for this display. Okay, so let's check out Android Auto. So we're going to connect to our Bluetooth. So we're going to search for devices. Here we go. Okay, so that's pretty good, about sort of 12-ish seconds, so very similar to CarPlay. And we're into Android Auto here. So I'd say the quality isn't the best on this display. I've seen better, but generally it is fairly responsive. I'd say the icons are slightly taller than they should be, so the ratio isn't 100% perfect. But dipping in and out of music and navigation is pretty good, and the screen is fairly responsive with Android Auto as well. Let's try a quick call as well. Hello? 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 Okay, quality there is good, and the delay is also on par with CarPlay 2, so that's also a positive. Audio playback, again, is just as good. And also test that in the car properly as well. So, but generally, Android Auto and CarPlay both behave pretty well. So finally, we got AirPlay and audio and Android Cast. Two things that I personally don't think is actually quite good on these displays in general. Although it is a 9-inch display, so you're not going to get many 9-inch phones on you anyway. So there is some benefit of casting to a display such like this because of its size. But anything smaller, I would say it's not really worth it. So let's go ahead with AirPlay first. So we're going to quickly go and clear connections. And with the connections clear, we're going to jump straight in with AirPlay. So now this display is basically transmitting out a Wi-Fi network, which we will need to connect to with our phone. So we're going to go and search for Wi-Fi connections. I'm looking for AirPlay here to pop up. Here it is. So we're going to connect to that using the password 1 to 8 and join. All right, so now we're connected. So we can swipe down here and go to share screen. Smart screen comes up. Then we tap that. And now we're screen mirroring our phone. So I have this to the side here so you can see differences between the connection speed. It's not too bad, but let's try audio sync in some YouTube videos. DJing from the back of the car seat on their phone without requiring access to one that's currently connected to CarPlay. The other connected. So I'd say that's okay-ish. The lip sync is going to be slightly off, which means there is a millisecond delay somewhere. So we're going to try out the Twitch sound test. So I'd say it's between 300 and 400 milliseconds off. So that means you're not going to get very good lip syncing if you really are focusing on the display. But for background audio and things like that, it might be quite good for that. So as expected then in terms of AirPlay casting. So let's try how seamless it is for Android. So we're going to disconnect from our phone and switch to Android casting. So for Android, unfortunately, again, it's not using native casting, which is such a big letdown. And we need to use an app called TC Link. So we've got a QR code here, which we're going to scan. Now we download the APK and then open it. Okay, so we give it the permissions that we need. And now we're searching. It's found the device, so we're going to connect, start our casting, and now we're in. So quality is not as good as iOS AirPlay, but I would say it's fairly responsive, but just the quality is quite degraded compared to AirPlay mode. So let's just try YouTube again. Okay, I'd say that's even worse. I'd say that's on the verge of 400 and 500 milliseconds there. So I'd say it's not good. It's not really safe for purpose. And I think for background audio, it's fine. But if you were to actually watch something, I think the lip syncing would just be out of sync and it wouldn't look so nice. But let's try with me and me speaking, because that's going to be the test. So you can have someone else DJing from the back of the car seat on their phone without requiring access to one that's currently connected to CarPlay. The other Yeah, so it is a little bit out of sync, but more importantly, it's the frame rate. It's not really as good as AirPlay is, but even AirPlay, the frame rate isn't that great either. So I personally wouldn't buy a display just for AirPlay and casting. They're never really that great, let's be honest. So here's the shortcut menu that they've overlaid for Android casting. And then finally, we've got playback option on the right here, which basically gives you easy access to watch back all your currently captured videos directly off the SD card. And that's basically all the features in a nutshell, really. So let's now jump in the car and let me just show you how easy it is to install, and then we'll go through all the audio options that are available to get the audio from this display onto your car stereo. So I'll see you over there. Is this a good angle? Don't know, is it a good angle? I look quite fat in this angle, don't I? Probably too many pies. Do I look less fat now? How's this for a view? All right, so we're in the Gulf. It's absolutely miserable out here. I've had a good lunch, so let's get cracking. We've got the HOTPEAK 9-inch CarPlay display here. We're going to do a quick mounting of the mounting arm onto the windscreen. So it sits onto the front of the dash. Then we're going to plug in our 12-volt power adapter down below, and then we're going to test out a few of the audio options. So we're going to take off the cover and we get this attached to either our windscreen or we're going to try our dashboard. So if you do attach it to the windscreen, you could have an issue with the mount getting in the way of the camera. So a lower install is a little bit nicer and the camera can get a better view over the dashboard. So we're going to mount it onto the dash first. But before we stick that down, we're going to get the display all nicely lined up. Then we're going to stick that down, clamp that in place. So that's in there. Then we're going to get our 12-volt adapter here and plug that into the 12-volt socket. There's plenty of cable here to do a much more discreet install where you can actually pass it down to the back of the dashboard, all the way off to the passenger side and back through the glove box and into the 12-volt adapter if your 12-volt adapter is located down there. As it's USB-C, you might be able to do a more discreet install and rule out the 12-volt adapter completely and use a 12-volt USB-C adapter with enough power to charge the display. But it will need to be 5 volts and 3 amps at least out of that USB-C port, so at least 15-watt charging at least for the display to operate properly. The suction cup doesn't really work that well with the dashboard surface, so you probably will get a better connection if you were to use a windscreen, but as I said earlier, you will have a bit of an issue with the dashboard camera looking around the mounting arm. But it is off center. You can see if I pop it up like that, it's going to be slightly away from the center line of the mount, so that might work in our favor, but we'll have a look at the dash cam in a second. But let's get this thing fired up. So I'm going to turn it over. Right, that's everything all fired up, and in first instance it is a big chunky screen. I think if you've got a very narrow car, it's a bit too overwhelming for me personally. That's why I like a more panoramic display rather than a 4x3 display, which is what this one is. Okay, so let's hear the first audio option. We're first going to go into the audio options section. We're going to switch to FM first, and we're going to go to the FM radio. We've got 87.5, so we're going to switch to 87.5. That's locked in place pretty good. Not hearing any hissing, so that's very positive as well. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go to CarPlay mode and connect to our phone. I'm getting a little bit of interference now in the FM. So that's the CarPlay up and running. Looks nice, got a good viewing angles. This screen has got kind of like a coating on it where it has a bit of friction for your finger, so sliding is a little bit awkward for me personally. Unless you've got greasy fingers, I think it might be okay for you, but personally it's not so smooth to navigate. So we're going to fire up some audio.
Well, here we are, back in the hot, muggy street of New York.
So we got the same problem. I don't know if it's my display, but I think it would have been tracked in QA if this was a more global issue. So it might be my system that's causing this interference, but it seems that every time there's a bass that kicks in, the whole entire signal completely dies. And I have tried different frequencies, same issue all the way through. So right out the bat, FM's not very good on this display. So let's go straight to auxiliary. So we've got our auxiliary cable here with the two 3.5mm connections. I'd say you probably got about 1.20 m or 1.30 m for this cable, which is definitely going to be plenty enough to get to an auxiliary port in the car. And then I'm going to switch the media to auxiliary, and then I'm going to plug in up the top here somewhere if I can find it. So we're plugged into auxiliary now. We need to go back and swap out the audio mode. So that's now using auxiliary.
Well, here we are, back in the hot, muggy street of New York.
So that sounds good, much more fuller, better in the bass as well. Obviously 10 times better than FM with the frequency problem that we had earlier. The only problem is you've got another cable now you have to deal with, but if you've got a very short run of to your auxiliary port, you might be able to do a bit more discreet install, or possibly even buy a shorter auxiliary cable so there's not much loose cable hanging around. Okay, let's go to the next option. We're going to take out our auxiliary port, return to the home screen and check our audio options. So we've done speaker, FM and auxiliary. We're now going to do the fourth, which is Bluetooth audio. So this is going to disconnect our CarPlay, and it's now going to reconnect, whilst my phone is now going to basically talk to a Bluetooth device, that being our car stereo. So we're going to go into our media, change over to Bluetooth audio, connect to our iPhone. So if I press play currently, it's going to play out of my phone. So now we need to connect our phone to the car stereo. So we're going to connect to Bluetooth and pair. And now the phone is connected to the stereo whilst also simultaneously connected to the display. Now the benefit of this means is that we can now use wheel controls. So if I go right, we can now toggle between different tracks using the wheel controls. I can hold down the speaker button and hopefully trigger.
A few moments later.
So unfortunately the wheel controls for Siri doesn't work, so we have to use our voice instead.
Go ahead.
Hi, this is Anthony from CarPlayLife.com. This is an audio test using the HOTPEAK 9-inch CarPlay display, and this is an audio test using the microphone that's over on the left hand side here. Or is it? Because I think if I tap that, it's not going to get me at all. But if I tap this, it's probably going to come from my phone instead. So that's the one issue with Bluetooth audio on these displays. Because you're connecting to your phone, you're basically going to get the microphone from your phone instead, rather than from the display. So once you're using Bluetooth audio, it won't use the microphone here at all. It'll use the microphone from your phone. So if you do have it in a bag, in a back pocket, it's not going to get you the best quality unless you have your phone mounted on a dash like here, and the microphone can clearly pick you up. And it's going to be the same on Android Auto as well. But those are your 4 audio options, obviously going from worst to best. FM, auxiliary, or in my case, FM, onboard speaker, auxiliary, and then Bluetooth audio. So if you've got Bluetooth stereo, it's going to be perfect for that, with the caveat that you might have some microphone issues as long as you have your phone out of your pocket. Otherwise, auxiliary is going to be the next best thing for you if your car stereo has an auxiliary port to jack into. So that's all the audio options. Let's check out the DVR camera. So we're going to go back and we're going to go into the menu for the camera. Now currently it's recording in 4K. We've got a badge here or a watermark saying it's H.265 compression, Ultra HD. You can see a little bit of the mount there. So if I raise the camera to its extent, that gets rid of the mount completely. And if I bring this camera over a little bit, that's a little bit more central, because I have got the display angled slightly. So now you're gonna have to angle the camera to the right to get you a more straight on display. And I think it looks nice. It's probably recording now, so I'm gonna switch to that recording so you can see it, how great it is out there. I think that's all right. I'll do a quick test drive out in the day and also test drive this out at night so you can see the recording of both of those feeds. And obviously the camera quality is going to be based on how far it is away from the screen in terms of glare and distortion, as well as how high you have it off your dashboard, because if you have it too low, you might see more dashboard than the road ahead. So if you do were to consider things like vent mounting, then that could be an issue as well. Okay, so the 4K version of the HOTPEAK 9-inch CarPlay display currently retails for $139.99, and you can check out my links down below to learn more about this display on Amazon, as well as support the channel and buy yourself one. Overall, it's a nice display. It's got nice to look at. There are a few UI issues that I probably would address. There is obviously the dash camera. That's going to give you added feature and benefit if you don't have a dash cam currently in your car. The quality is definitely down to your setup, where you place the screen in your car and how far the camera is away from your windscreen. Personally, I do prefer a more panoramic 16:9 kind of format of a display, because my Golf window height is actually quite narrow. So this display really does take up quite a lot of the real estate. Personally, I would probably mount it on a vent so it's a little bit further down, but then the dashboard camera would then be blocked from view. Obviously, the 4 options does make it a bit more versatile on the types of connections that you can get from the stereo that's already in your car. As you've seen, the FM doesn't really work in my setup, so there could be an issue with your setup too. If FM is your only option, I'll be a bit more cautious about that. But if you've got auxiliary or a Bluetooth stereo already in your car and you're looking for CarPlay or Android Auto on a nice shiny 9-inch display, then for its price, this is actually not a bad option. All right, thanks for watching, and I hope you found this video helpful. Give us a thumbs up if it has, and let me know in the comments if you have any questions about the HOTPEAK 9-inch display, and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.